Alright, we're going to skin a wild hog today. We got my tools all laid out right here. I usually use a couple different knives. The hog we have today is about kind of like a medium-sized sow, I guess you could say. So we don't have to deal with the shield that's on a bore, but it'll give you kind of an idea of just like an average size hog. We're going to cut slits in between the tendons and the legs, just like you saw me do right there with my surgical blade. It's easier to put your gable on usually when it's not attached to the rope. Sometimes with smaller hogs it's pretty difficult to get it on the gable. You might have to have a smaller gable. Now we're going to hook it up. And crank it up to the level that you need. Alright, we're going to start at the front legs. Right at the ankle before the hoof, you're going to take your bone skinning knife. I keep a surgical blade knife and a bone skinning knife. The bone skinning knife is just tougher, pretty much. You can sharpen it back pretty easy. That's what you're going to use here because you're going to be hitting some bones some. You're going to use the part of the blade that's closest to the handle on the knife, because you don't use that very much, so you can use it right here to keep it from dulling the other parts of your blade that you use often. But you're going to cut a circle all the way around. On both legs. Now I'm switched to the surgical blade. You're going to go straight up the leg. And kind of go across right there. Then you're going to connect it. Do the same thing with the other leg. If you were skinning this hog to mount for like taxidermy, you would take these cuts straight up to the middle of the hog and then cut a ring around the middle of the hog and then skin it down from there. But this is the exact same way you would cut it. If you were going to cape it out, you would just have to go straight up to the middle then. Alright, now I'm going to cut straight up the middle with the skinning knife. But I'm not going to cut the guts or anything. I'm just basically cutting the skin up to the top. Then you're going to connect your cuts that you already have in between your tendons on the legs. We're going to connect that. This is a skinning tool that I use. It's made by Primos. I don't think they make it anymore, but you can use just like a gut hook if you wanted to, or just something that's pointy but not too sharp to where it'll cut the skin. But I use it just to pull down the skin as I'm working with the other knife. You can't see it right now, but you'll see it in a second. This is probably the hardest for most people. You can see how I stick the blade. You can pull the skin back and slide your blade in between the skin and the tendon. That's going to keep you from cutting the tendon. You can see right there, I actually broke a surgical blade when I was trying to cut right then. You always want to cut from the inside out, not the outside in. That'll keep the hair from getting cut and getting all inside your meat. So you can see I'm constantly going from the inside of the skin. Right there you can see how I pulled up on the skin to where I could slide the knife in between the tendon and the skin. That's usually the hardest part for a lot of beginners. They tend to have trouble hitting the tendon and stuff. If you do hit the tendon, it's very bad news. So you're gonna have a hard time after that. So it's very important to not hit the tendon and cut it. But a lot of times beginners will do that. I have never really had a problem with that, but it's just advised to be very careful when you're doing that. You can see right here I'm using my tool. With a hog, you can't really pull all the skin off like a deer. You pretty much have to work all the way down, applying pressure with one hand and cutting with the other. This is why it takes quite a bit longer to skin a hog as opposed to a deer, because you got to skin it the whole way down. Now for me, this is probably the hardest part on the hog myself, in my opinion. Just getting past the butthole and the tail and stuff up there on the top without losing too much meat and that kind of thing. It's probably just the most difficult for me anyway, in my opinion. You always want to cut away from yourself. You never want to cut towards you because you don't want to get cut, but you also don't want to cut towards the skin either, the hide, because you'll constantly be cutting the hide and that kind of thing, especially if you want to cape it out. You don't want to cut your hide all up and stuff, but you don't want to get dirt and hair and all that kind of crap in your meat either, so you're always cutting away from the hide with every cut that you make. See, we're kind of past the butt right now, and we're on the tail. And you're gonna cut the tail until I kind of tap on it with the blade sometimes until you find the cartilage in the tail, one of the just cartilage points in the tail, and then you'll cut through the tail then in the cartilage point, and that part will be over then. It's really not that difficult past that. So right now we're just applying pressure with our left hand with my skinning tool, and then just cutting with the right hand as you work your way down. You still got to be careful. You can pierce the guts while you're doing this right here. If you're not paying attention, all it takes is just cutting a little bit too deep and you'll pierce the guts. Now we're just about to our original cuts in the bottom of the pig here. We're just going to connect our cuts all together now. Go ahead and raise it up as high as it'll go. That way you can get all up closer underneath the pig here and underneath the legs. You also don't have to deal with the testicles or the penis on a sow pig, which you want to stay away from the penis altogether when you're skinning. You don't want to accidentally cut it or anything. It gets pretty bad when you do something like that. And as far as the testicles, it's just a little harder up at the top to get past them, I would say, but they're not so bad. You know, skinning really big boar hogs is quite much more of a difficult task than a young boar or a sow. The shield on a boar right now would be like a piece of wood that you're trying to bend right now around the head. It's just about an inch thick of just like cartilage kind of stuff. But the sow, we don't have to worry about that, so we're making pretty good progress. Still just working our hide down, cutting it off. We're going to end up being at our original cut points in just a second here. You see how I'm working that skinning tool right there? You can just use your hands if you got nothing else, but it just helps me to use that. It's basically just a small hook with a handle on it. Gonna go right up to the neck. We're gonna cut a ring all the way around it. Go ahead and put this is a gut bucket. Go ahead and put your hide in your gut bucket. That way it'll fall in once you cut it. You cut a ring around all the flesh with a knife to where it leaves nothing but bone. And you can cut all the way through right there with the knife if you found the right spot. But I just take the loppers. Go ahead and cut the ankles right there. Cut the hooves off. They're gonna hang there. Just cutting through the bone. Finish cutting them off with the knife. My loppers were pretty dull. This would be a lot easier if you had some sharp loppers. Toss the hooves in the gut bucket. Some sharp loppers would just cut straight through that in a straight line. This kind of like more or less broke the bones into pieces, so it's difficult to cut through with the knife right there. We're gonna grab the meat hook now. Hook it right there. And then we're gonna cut the shoulder off. It's just connected by muscle tissue, so you want to get in between the body and the shoulder there, go all the way to the top. If you start cutting through cartilage, you're not at the top yet. Go all the way to the top, and then you carry it over with your meat hook, drop it in your cooler. If you don't have a meat hook or something like that, sometimes you can leave the hooves on and carry it over with the hoof, and then cut the hoof off once you get over to the cooler. There is no bone here, it's just all meat that you will be cutting to get the shoulders off. Back to the loppers to cut the head off. There you go. You can eat the head too, of course. I like the brains a lot. I shot a bunch of pigs today, so I didn't really deal with it. As you can see right there with my gut bucket. But yeah, the head is the brains is normally a very good thing to eat. Alright, right now you could cut the back straps out or something like that, but I prefer to gut the hog now because it's pretty easy to cut into the guts while you're trying to get the back straps off the body. So we're in the gutting process right now. We're gonna save most everything else on this hog, meat wise. Alright, I have a gut knife. It's just a short and fat gut knife. It has a gut hook on it, but it's kind of, the key to it is kind of like, it's just not long and pointy. It's kind of it doesn't have much of a point. The more point that you have is going to probably cut up in the guts, and you don't want that. You just want to get in there real tight with it and cut the organs out without actually piercing any of the organs. You can see how kind of short and fat the knife is. Butthole right there, you're going to pull as much as you can out. And you can cut it off if you need to, because we'll be back to it later. You can finish cutting it out if you needed to. Cut some of that right there on the side. That'll help release like the skin and meat and stuff along the back side of the ribs there. That'll help release some right there. It'll help release the guts down, let them kind of fall. When you saw me cut down with the gut knife initially, you do have to stick 2 fingers into the guts and cut in between your 2 fingers. No matter what kind of knife you use, even if you're using a gut hook, it can still pierce the guts when they fall over. So you pretty much got to put your hand in there to free up some space in between the knife and the guts as you're going down that initial cut. Cut it all the way down to the ribs as far as you can go as well. It does make a difference. The guts won't want to fall out if you haven't cut low enough in the front. And right now, all the guts and stuff will kind of stick to the back walls and that kind of thing of the carcass. So you're just sticking your hand back in there, pulling the guts away so you don't cut them, and cutting away everything to where it releases it into the gut bucket. All the way down in the front, you'll have to do the same thing to release all the rest of the vital organs in the front. And the last little bit right there will pop loose with a couple cuts and go into the gut bucket. You can eat some of the organs as well. You can look into that and that kind of thing. I typically don't eat the organs very much. You could eat the heart and stuff, but usually the heart's pretty destroyed when I shoot them. So right now we're gonna cut the brisket, I guess, like the front of the ribs there, downward all the way as far as you can. And that's gonna release all that blood and stuff in the bottom there into the gut bucket. Now we're going to get the inner loins. This is going to be the best cut of meat that's available. Just a little bit right here, so you want to make sure you get it all. There's one on each side right here in this little spot right here next to the spine. It should be pretty easy to see. It's just that little bit of meat in that exact area right there. And I'm not spraying off the meat or anything today. I intend on doing that later. It's just something I kind of do a good bit unless the meat's just like really dirty for some reason. I usually just throw it in the cooler and end up washing it and thoroughly cleaning it and cleaning it up later. A lot of places don't even have water or anything available, so you kind of get used to not needing it. There is water available here. I just, like I said, it's one less step right now. I can do it later. It is raining this entire video too. I killed the hogs in the rain and still raining when I'm cleaning them. Alright, we're going for the back straps. Just the end of the ham, right where the back meets the ham, right there is where you'll begin. It will kind of have a bone right there that'll let you know where to begin, but it's pretty much just at the bottom of the ham. A cut along the top and a cut along each side of the spine. Now, especially on a hog too, the meat wants to tear easier than a deer, so you want to kind of work it down pretty easy or pretty slow. You can cut the other side of the back strap too. That'll help free it up. You just kind of work the back strap down. It's probably your second best cut of meat on the hog, so you're gonna work it down real slow to make sure you get all the meat and it doesn't rip off and stay in the cavity. Alright, we're going to move to the ribs now. Going to get our loppers. We've already cut all the way down to the bone right here on the ribs. So you're just going to work right down the backbone, cutting with the loppers one by one, all the way down to your outer ribs. It should hang there. Don't put too much faith in that, but it should hang there and allow you to use the meat hook to hook it, and then cut through the meat with the knife, which will release the ribs and allow you to put them in the cooler. Knife needs to be sharpened. Now I'm using loppers because I usually always have a pair around, carry around with me. Really easy, don't need power, just a big help altogether when I'm skinning. But you can use a saw for this, it's really good too. Also a cleaver I've used before in this process, and once I also used a machete. Hook the rib, cut it off. Now you can get some neck meat off right there if you want to. There's not a whole lot of it on a hog. You might can do some other stuff with the actual backbone and stuff if you wanted to. It usually goes to the dog with me. There's not a whole lot left on there. That neck meat, if there is enough, it's good meat, but sometimes there ain't hardly much for you to work with. And the rest is just like bone stock and that kind of thing. So we're gonna cut it off right underneath the hams there. Toss it over there. Take your knife. We're gonna lower it down a little bit so we can work on it easier. We're going to take the knife and cut it straight down the middle. We're going to get all the flesh, just a cut straight through. All the flesh out of the way. We're going to take our loppers again. This works a lot better with a saw, but you can kind of get good with it with the loppers. We're going to just cut them in two pieces, right down the middle. There's some bone right there that you'll need to cut. And also on the other side. If you have somebody else with you, they will definitely help right now keep the animal straight from moving. But you can apply some pressure, kind of hook the loppers in there and apply some pressure until you cut all the bone in between the two. Finish it off with the knife. Now is where you can clean out any of the butthole that you missed or anything that doesn't belong. You want to get rid of right now, you can cut it off when they're hanging there. Should hang there. You're going to take the ham. You can put it in the cooler right now. I'm just going to lay it right here. I'm going to cut the tendon with the knife now. We don't need it no more. And any other flesh right there because we're about to cut it with the loppers again. So there you go. Lay it in the cooler. Grab the super dull loppers. chop it off. You can also cut it off at the joint with a knife too. That's definitely something that's you can do. You might lose a little bit of meat there when you do that, but that's definitely an option. This is just a whole lot easier and quicker to just cut it with the loppers a lot of times. This whole hog should fit in a cooler. Just about any, you know, average size hog will fit in a cooler with ice. Do the same thing here. You can watch my other videos. I'll show you how to cook all this stuff, and I'll also show you the hunt where I shot these hogs. I ended up shooting I believe 13 in about a day's time in Alabama. That is it. You can dump the guts and try and shoot a coyote off of them or something, and then, like I said, all this meat will have to be cleaned up and deboned and stuff later, depending on what you wanted to cook with it. But I'll be launching another video pretty soon of the entire process of cooking it as well.